but it's a pretty in-depth study too. You can read it.
Sorry.
Welcome.
Thanks.
All right. I'll give you a minute to open your packet.
Good, you can go ahead.
Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Nantucket Memorial Airport Commission for August the 14th, 2018. This meeting is both being audio and video recorded. Mr. Buscarin is traveling and will not be present. Are there any comments on the agenda? Hearing none, I'll take it as approved. You have the draft minutes of the July 10th meeting in front of you. Are there any additions or corrections?
No.
Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move that. Make that a motion.
Thank you. Are all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Thank you. May I have a motion to ratify the warrants of July 25th and August 8th, 2018?
So moved.
Second.
Further comment? All in favor?
Aye.
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 It's unanimous. Is there public comment at this time? Hearing none. The pending leases and contracts, Mr. Rafter. We have quite a list today.
We have 3 operating agreements. Retrix is for the ground handling business that they do. Fly the Whale is their charter operation, and Altius Aviation is also a charter operator that is affiliated with Blade as well as Fly the Whale. We also have a lease agreement with Airport Gas, and I will give credit to our attorney, Jennifer Platch, did a very good job on handling that. We have a contract, and I'm sorry, that's for $248,184, and that's the rent, plus a percentage on the non-fuel sales and a fuel flowage fee as well. There's a contract with MHQ for $42,691, and that's the purchase of a Ford Explorer. It's the second of 2 vehicles that were split. We put them one last year, one this year, and one of those had already received state funding through the ASMP grant. We also have a contract with Graywall Software. That's our Viochi software licensing agreement, the annual, for $31,400. And 2 contracts with McFarland Johnson, task orders 8 and 9. 9 is for the botanical monitoring as required by an environmental permit, and task order 8 is fuel farm tank compliance with regard to the tank testing and various items that are required.
Are there any questions on any of these?
One, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
I'd like
sir.
to just recuse from the vote on airport gas, so if we could do that one separately, I'd appreciate that.
All right. I will entertain a motion to accept the operating agreements from Retrix Aerodrome Centers, Fly the Whale, Altius Aviation LLC, and the contracts with MHQ Inc., Graywall Software LLC, McFarland Johnson Inc., and McFarland Johnson Inc. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous.
Leave the table for the airport gas.
I just had one question on airport gas, Mr. Rafter. What is the increase in base rent that we're getting from this?
Overall, I don't know, I believe it goes from about 53 cents to $4.24 a square foot, though. It's a significant increase in base rent.
Okay. Is there a motion? Are there any further questions or comments on that lease? Is there a motion to approve it?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Top. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. Thank you. Next, we have the pending matters, Mr. Rafter.
Under
general fund repayment.
the general fund repayment, there's no change. The town has been busy with their closing and things, but still waiting to hear back from their bond counsel whether or not, or I'm sorry, they're still trying to prepare their request back to FAA. On the crew quarters.
In the meantime, I not correct that we've made payments
They,
according to the original deal?
yes, and
And
I don't
they-
want to say they're held in escrow, but they're held in some separate account
Right.
that haven't been released.
So how many years have we done that now? 3?
I believe it is 3, yeah.
Thank you.
On the crew quarters, I took a visit out to Sankaty Golf Course, which is where some of the work that we had looked at earlier was done. And you may recall, we went through some of the drawings. They had basements there. Well, they did that because of the landscape at that particular area. I think it would be beneficial for us to consider not having basements and go with a first and second floor so that it would be somewhat in the look of the development next door, Park Circle, I'm sorry. It would also be a cost savings to us not to have to develop the basement. And some of the other things we noted while we were out there is that they had in their costs, they had to put in sewer and water. So we're going to go back and look at the numbers that we have for their details and try to make a better estimate of what we think the cost may be. And still waiting for Brian to get back to me from bond counsel on whether or not bonding or bonds could be used for that project. So we're going to reassess and reevaluate the estimates and then determine the financing mechanisms that are available. On the Part
Any
139.
questions?
I have a question. If we're not having a basement, will we have something that is going to be more substantial than what they had at the elementary school? Because it is mold in the school and stuff, and I don't know.
New or old?
The old one.
I'm not,
Yeah, not yet on the new, thank
I'm
God.
not sure what that, is that a slab?
I think it
floor.
was the way the water drained off, and I don't know, but I would check on that to be sure that we do that so that we don't have that issue afterwards. Please, and thank you.
Will do.
Or maybe crawl space.
Yeah, I don't think they even have that. And of course, they're in
Yeah,
there with
maybe
little
slab on
animals.
grade, which may have caused some of that, so, okay.
Yeah, please, thank
I
you.
had just two comments on that. I think you still would do a basement, you just wouldn't finish the basement.
Yeah, it'd be a
I think
storage
that
or
was maybe
something.
where we were going with it. So, as opposed to the initial discussions and the way the Sankaty cottages are, essentially there's living space in the
I
basement.
got it, I understand,
Right.
thank you.
And then with respect to sewer and water, I wouldn't back those costs out completely because you're still gonna have to run a sewer
The
main.
laterals, yep.
Well, you have to
Oh,
run
yeah,
a main all the way
Yeah,
in,
that's
put
true.
manholes in. You're gonna have to run a water line.
Well, that's-
I know they're getting into
Yeah, we're
details,
not
but I
gonna
just
back it out, but you're right.
right.
It's just
That's all.
not as
Thank you.
expensive, hopefully.
thanks for the update.
On the Part 139 certification letter of correction, all of the items that were identified in the letter are complete. However, the certification inspector has come back and said that she wants to see a complete rewrite of tab 11, and she has given us till the end of September, which we'll have it completed by then. I want to make a note here and make everybody aware of something, that the last item was a concrete regen pad for our fuel trucks. When we initially looked at this a year or so ago, the engineering firm estimated construction to cost $66,000 and engineering fees of $53,000, and we dismissed them. Our staff did it for $6,000, and it's complete. So
We just have to get
I give
approval.
them kudos. They did a great job, came up with some great ideas, and got it done.
I'm sure the rest of the commission joins me in asking you to give them our thanks.
Yes,
sure will.
indeed, yeah.
Can I move on to the finance items?
Yes.
Under finance, in your packet, you have the preliminary year-end results. The revenues are, and again, they're preliminary, but the revenues are projected to be $13,945,000. It's about 5% better than last year, 11% above the budget. And however, expenses were projected to be $13,174,000, which is a 4% below the budget, but significantly higher than last year by about $1.1 million. The majority of that is made up from 3 primary drivers, and that is the cost of fuel is the biggest one. Second is salary and wages. We have 1 new employee, plus we have 2 years of retroactive union increases. And the other is the category of other, which is about $285,000, and last year was 0. It includes 2 of the payments to the town because of timing. One was not booked last year, so it rolled over into this year.
But if that was the case, it should be double that.
Well, no, if you took half of the 285, and it's really not half because there's 2 big different numbers because of the in-kind services. But essentially it would have been 140 last year, whatever, and 140 this year. So net earnings are projected to be $771,390, which is below last year by just over $500,000. But after transfers, retained earnings, and other transfers, the surplus is projected to be $1.7 million, which again is a decrease over last year. But again, there's a number of reasons for that, one-time items. And the projected fund balance, when combined with prior year certified retained earnings and the associated transfers, will be about $2.6 million at the end of the day. So in general, although it's less than last year, we still are realizing a profit of about $771,000. But I will caution everyone, as we've seen recently, a fund balance of 1.7 is not a lot of money when we have projects that are coming up that are going to be extremely expensive. We have one that the sponsor's share could be close to $1 million. So we're trying to manage that accordingly.
Wouldn't it be nice to have a year with no surprises?
One other note,
Boring.
on the PFC fund, the balance this year is 1.787, and it's up from 1,237,000 last year. In FY17, and this is not on there, I apologize, I just got this today. We collected $619,610, and in FY18 is $542,591. So it's a 12% decrease, but the majority of that last year was higher because of a settlement with Island Air where we received a big chunk of them, as well as our employment's dropping, but you're going to see that they're kind of leveling off and hopefully coming back up. On the parking revenue review, which is also in your packet.
This is just so everybody understands. We have 3 pots of money, basically. One of them is the certified retained earnings, over and above our budget. One of them is certified retained earnings. The second one is the fuel revolver, but there the balance is way down from
Yes.
last year, because we've spent some money from there, and
We transferred in $630,000 into a capital to advance that project ahead of time.
right.
But so the fuel revolver, I was going to talk about that later, but we're going to be reviewing the peak season fuel results and purchases, but we're most likely going to be coming back to the commission, probably not next month, the following, to suggest an increase in the fuel revolver this year.
In the expense budget.
In the expense, which automatically raises our revenue. But this year we were within about 2 fuel loads of exceeding the cap, which once we exceed it, we can't purchase any fuel. So we're looking at maybe a couple $100,000 increase in that cap. And that would then have to be approved by the Finance Committee and the Select Board.
Any questions?
One other
Oh, I'm
quick
sorry.
note, just on a update, more current on financial. The Pops Weekend sales were up, and sorry. The gallons were up 7%, and total sales were up 16%.
Dollar sales.
Yeah, and dollar sales were, the difference was up 93,653 over last year. So it was a very strong Pops Weekend. Do you want to go into the parking review? Parking
Are there any
revenue?
questions on the results for the year?
So when you look at the parking review, or parking revenue review, there's essentially two categories. There's the enforcement and the general revenue from the fare box, if you will, or the fees. And it's a tough picture to look at because it's not a comparison of apples to apples. As you recall, we were operating the system, we put it out, and Republic operates it. Their first year began last summer. And so what you don't see in there is the calculation for our staff timing. Jamie has done an analysis, and she estimated what our staff time was and put a number to that. And we're within about 5,000 to the good, actually, of overall net. Some of the decrease in revenue is associated with, from the enforcement perspective, the transition where we were somewhat lenient on enforcement so that we could educate the people on the new system. The other is a drop because of the overnight fares being $10 as opposed to $20. So we're starting to see it come back up a bit. We've increased our enforcement capabilities, doubled them actually. So I expect we'll see a change, but you know, for us to get it back up, total net, it's going to take a while because again, we have an expense side now associated with it.
Well, we have an identifiable expense side.
Yes, identifiable is the key.
That was going to be my question, why were the figures so different? You know, but now you've answered it.
Yeah,
It's basically our staff time.
Right.
we've
Well, I
put a-
wondered about that.
Put a lot of staff time into that.
Any questions? You know, we'll take another look next year and see what it looks like. Okay. I guess we've covered the fuel revolver cap, right?
Yes,
So on to 2 grant acceptances.
that's correct.
We're a backed up generator for $382,000 and the environmental assessment for $475,000, which are both 90% of our cost.
Yes, and the state picks up 5%.
Can we accept these in one motion, or do we need 2?
I think you can do it with one.
I will entertain a motion to accept the AIP 68 emergency backup generator grant for $382,000 and the AIP 69 environmental assessment grant for $475,470.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. All right. Belt reimbursement, where are we on that?
We just received an email that there was a glitch in their system, and we should
their
have
bag
it.
belt.
We should have it by the end of the week. That's again $259,344, and then it should be in the accounts. I think sometime in September. It's an electronic transfer. So, although that may be October now because we're going to have to come back to the commission with the other transaction agreement. We have to review the terms of that. And we're also working with Brian Turbot to identify where those funds can be applied properly.
All right, thank you. We announced a couple of meetings ago, Mr. Rafter announced that the airport had decided to take over the management of the T-hangars itself. And the Nantucket Hangar Association has asked if they could come and talk to us. Mr. Cheney?
If I may, before they get started, I just want to clarify something.
Yeah, please.
The agenda item, I think, said T-hanger policy, and what is in your packet is an overall policy for the rental of hangars and tie downs. When we were looking at it, we couldn't necessarily do it individually, so we did a rental policy, and then we will develop the procedures.
All right, we'll come back to
Once the
talking
policy's
about,
finalized.
come back to talking about that.
Yep.
With your permission,
Yes, sir.
we'd like to speak following the presentation of the proposed Raptor.
It's really not,
The airport's proposed policy, tie-down hangar and tie-down rental policy. May I ask why?
I,
I don't know what.
honestly, I didn't have a presentation. It's a handout that's in there because there's draft copies of the leases. There's a draft policy, all those things.
Rates,
So I-
right?
I don't, did we put rates in that
I
policy?
haven't seen
I don't know. I
No
think that was
rates.
gonna be, but as I think I mentioned you, the initial, and again, we haven't put anything to paper yet. I think it was 600 and 900 for single and 900 for twin.
Well, that will have to be discussed and approved in a public hearing, which we will hold when?
Yeah, any rate changes, we have to go through a public hearing
When do you
process.
anticipate we will have that?
The latest I would say is October, because we have to do it in November.
Okay.
I would hope maybe we could do it next meeting.
All right.
But again, we'd be glad to hear any input you have before we start putting anything to paper on that, so.
Yeah, could I just,
And Ray, I did receive your email, I believe it's in the packet too, Mr. Karowitz, on, and we also have in the packet the survey that our FBO did with other airports for their hangar pricing too. Could you come up to the microphone?
My name is Ray Karowitz. I'm one of the current tenants in the hangars. And just to give you a little history of how this came about, I've had either a tie downs for the last 28 years on island. And when a hangar came on the
We
market,
appreciate that.
yeah. When a hangar came on the market 2 years ago, it has something that I had always, I had done some investigation, but they were so expensive that there was no way that I could afford it. And when this hangar came on the market, Bill Michelevy, who no longer has an aircraft, and I spoke with him, and I said, well, what's the deal? And he said, well, I have to tell you that the 30 years is coming up next year. And he said there's a risk because the airport can take over the hangars. So I spoke with my wife, of course, and he suggested I speak with the airport manager, and I did. We had several meetings, and I was given the impression that we were going to be able to form an association, a nonprofit association, like I'm fortunate enough to be in Connecticut with a hangar association, and it has been excellent. And you saw the rates that I gave to Tom. So at $100, less than $100 a month, we have heated hangars, we have restrooms, we maintain everything. We hire outside contractors to do any of the maintenance that we can't do ourselves, such as fixing motors. So it was with that confidence level that I agreed to spend the money and start working with the other tenants. And we've had several meetings, and we even hired a lawyer to put together our bylaws. And we were encouraged for several months. This seemed to be the direction that we were going to take. And then at a few meetings, I've been here for the last several meetings, and I was wondering, when are we going to know what's going on? And I was informed that the decision was made that the airport was going to take it over. And that's all fine and good. My objective is to continue having a hangar. But when I hear fees of $600 or $900, unless that's annual, if you're talking about monthly, that's just outrageous. That's something that will put most of us out of the hangars. These hangars are not, they're very small. They're limited as far as the aircraft that can be put in there. They're very, for general aviation light aircraft. And I love to fly, but I can't afford to have $600 or $900 a month on hangar fees. The existing hangars are nowhere near that. The shared hangars are $300, and the heated ones are $400 a month
600 twins.
on the heated hangars.
300 and 600.
300 and 600. So at $300 a month, you can put a large twin in there.
No, the twins are 600, you said, right?
Yes.
The
Okay,
twin
it's
is a
600.
in there.
But you're talking 600 for a single engine aircraft with Hershey bar wings that has a hull value of maybe $70,000. It just pushes general aviation farther away from the island. So that's where I am. I made an investment. I knew there was a risk, but that risk, I moved forward with it because I was encouraged that we were going to have have an opportunity at least to present a nonprofit association that would advance general aviation here on island.
If I may, so we did an analysis, we received the proposal and determined, because of some of the way it was written too, that it was in our best interest to take over the T hangars. In terms of your investment or, being in there, one of the things, and I don't know if you've printed out the policy from the packet or not, but it's essentially a right of first refusal too. If you have a hangar and you're in there, you have right of first refusal. It's not like we're coming in and saying everybody out or any of that stuff.
Tom, I haven't seen any proposal, any packet.
Well,
Well,
it's
in the
all
packet.
online,
It
and that's what,
was publicly available on Friday online.
It was this past Friday?
Yes.
and just so you know, it's still draft, and the reason we did that is so that you could get a look at that and, give us your input and comments too. So it's online.
I apologize because none of us knew that was available.
That's fine. I can briefly go through some of it if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
That'd be great.
I just have the applicability and purpose, which is pretty straightforward. We have a definitions section. The policy itself, allocation and availability. Hangars shall be made available to interested aircraft owners on a first-come, first-served basis, subject to sufficient adequate space availability. As determined by the airport for particular types of aircraft, tenants will be required to execute a written agreement with the airport that identifies the terms and conditions of use for the hangar and tie-down space. Availability may be termed based on characteristics of the aircraft. And then we go into a wait list process, and that's where we talk about, right of first refusal, and the highest priority would be T hangar, down to common hangar, to paved tie-down, to grass tie-down, and then on the waiting list. And then just talks about permitted uses, that it's, not in violation of the FAA's decision on that. And what we're looking at doing is, and in the same online are draft agreements for the different types of uses. We make them 1 year
Take my copy, you're welcome to.
increments essentially, and that's just it's like an automatic renewal type thing. But what it does is it gives us the opportunity just to verify that the end number is correct and all the information is correct, that type of thing. So it's a continuous running agreement. And in terms of rate structure, what it says here is rates shall be based on level, priority, type of aircraft, and facility amenities such as heat and whatever. All users with valid agreement shall be exempt from landing and ramp fees, and vehicle, they'll receive 1 complimentary parking pass. And we also put the last statement in here is about non-conforming situations. If there's things we didn't think about, we'll make a decision, but you have a right to appeal to the commission too. So, again, this is not for requesting approval tonight from the board. We want to get it out there so you have a look at it. And again, if you go online, it has the sample lease for the T hangar, for common hangar, for tie down, all those things.
Okay. I apologize because I wasn't aware that it
No,
was.
and that's fine, and I don't know that the numbers are even in there, and I'm glad you brought up the rates, because that is something we're still, trying to put around, and we'll put something forth for a hearing and then go forward.
Because personally, it's the rates that I'm concerned with. The investment that I made, that's, I want to continue having a hangar, and if the rates are exorbitant, then I can't.
Right.
And by all means, the airport maintain it. It's less work for me, as long as the rates are reasonable.
Okay.
But
And
okay.
again, if any of you want to send us emails or whatever with comments on what you see there, please, we'd be glad to take a look at that.
Okay.
If you'd like, you can take these as well. One's the general hangar lease agreement draft, and the other is a secondary tenant hangar.
And let me try to explain, it's identified in definitions. So for the common hangars, there is a lease if you're in a common hangar, and then there's what's called a secondary license. And what that does, and we're just trying to clean things up, we're trying to formalize some of the things that were done in the past. If you have, let's say, a lease for a common hangar, and your aircraft's not in there, you're gone for 6 months, but somebody needs a hangar for a week or something, then we would have the ability to, under a secondary license, allow that person to use that space or whatever. But that's not applicable to T-hangars. T-hangars are exclusive or dedicated. We did put some language in that said we want to look at a future date, a sharing policy. So if you have a hangar and you want somebody else to be able to use it for a period of time, we don't object to that concept, but we want to make sure we have the, we're concerned about insurance and all the other things. So, we want to have a process for that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think some of the other fellows would like to say a few things.
Okay.
Thank you.
Steve Cheney, also a tenant owner, although the plan that I have now doesn't even fit in the T hangar any longer. And first, I know you're all volunteers, and I appreciate all that you do for the airport and the efficiency that you run it. My comment would be, again, I don't really have a dog in the fight, except to say that one of the pieces of our mission statement when we formed this organization was to promote general aviation. I think you all know, general aviation is way down. People aren't flying, and a big part of that is the excessive cost of what it costs to buy a plane, to pay for fuel, to pay for insurance, instruction, which, as you know, we don't have on Nantucket. We live on an island, and I got into aviation about 6 years ago, and I'm one of the youngest people that I know that has an airplane on Nantucket. And it wasn't easy. I had to leave the island to get instruction, and it wasn't easy to acquire my first airplane. And with the elements, it's really critical to get an airplane in a hangar. If the airport is running at a deficit and looking for places to increase fees, and increase the fuel price on a $60 million jet, that's a different story. But increasing rates on hangars that are integral to somebody like me or a young pilot getting into aviation, I struggle with that. I think that it's important for you as a commission to keep the hangar rates really low. And I would reference the study that Tom mentioned that he did on other state or airport run hangars around the New England area. And other than I think one outlier, they were all in the low 200 to 300 mark. So, are there a few people that can pay $600 for a hangar? Yeah, I'm sure there are, but I think what you'll find is there'll be a lot of empty hangars at higher rates, and the ones that are filled are not going to be people that are getting into aviation. So I would encourage you to keep the rates low to help promote GA.
Steve, I'd like to talk to you offline too. Apparently your aircraft's too big. We've been approached by some other parties that may be interested in doing some bigger hangars. So if
Great.
you're interested, I'll put you in contact with them.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
I have
Thank
a
you.
question.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Where does the 600 to 900
We just
amount come
we
from?
threw it out there in a draft rough meeting. It's not even, like I said, it's not even written down. But I wanted to be open with everybody, and Steve and I are having a conversation. This is the numbers that we're right now where we
Okay.
are. So that's why I wanted to have this first before we.
So that's
go
just a
and put
made
it
up
in.
number? I mean, that's not a basis?
That's not the number.
Based on
That's
anything?
not necessarily the number we're going to go into the hearing with.
Right.
But proposal
So-
will go into.
Right,
What we
but-
looked at, again, we looked at, what people were paying in the common hangars,
Mm-hmm.
and then, what the benefit of the T hangar was, and we said, okay, well, what about this rate? And again, these folks have a lot more working knowledge of it. We don't know what they're paying. So it was just a starting point, if you will.
Okay, so is that written down somewhere? I mean, I'm
No,
not
it's
sure
in
why,
in
I don't know
fact,
anything about it.
Even
Everybody
when,
knows
in
about
our
it.
meeting that I have for the draft procedures that will follow this policy, there's blanks in there.
Right.
It's kind of handwritten as a note, like, what about this? So,
Well, I think we should listen to the gentlemen that are here that have the planes. I know nothing about hangars to how the cost, and so I think that I would like to hear more from them. And as you say, we're going to discuss it at a further meeting.
so what I was trying to accomplish is this is an informal process where the hearing is more of a formal process and give everybody opportunity so that we do start at something that's reasonable, and then if there's more input, we look at it then, so.
All right, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr.
Question.
Chairman.
Encourage anybody else who wants to.
I had a question.
Oh,
to
go
them.
ahead.
How much do
Hang
they,
on, Mr. Cheney.
how much do they pay now
How much?
for a T hanger?
How much are, Mr. Gasparo's question is, how much are you paying now? for
So
T
the the T hangars right now are currently managed by Aerodrome.
Yeah.
Aerodrome pays you, as you know, a
Right.
set fee, and then they charge us $1,500, $1,200 to $1,500 per quarter. Does that sound right? 1,000 a quarter. That changes when they've had to do significant repairs, and they have they issue an additional fee.
Like an
But-
assessment or something?
Assessment, thank you. So it's about $4,000 a year, and that's a
So
good
it's-
point. I'm glad you mentioned this, because when we initially formed this association, one of our goals was we looked at what Aerodrome was paying you, what the insurance cost and what the maintenance costs were, and determined that they were making a significant premium over what we were, what was costing them. And again, that wasn't in terms of promoting GA, that we thought we could keep the cost even lower than what we were paying in the past, and still maintain the hangars in good order.
Thank you, Mr. Cheney.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Drake, Tom, Airport Commission, thank you for having us here. My name is Dr. William Sherman. I'm an island resident and have been an airplane T hangar owner renter since 2006, so that's coming up on 13 years now. When we had made as a group a proposal, I was one of the principals in that because we did the same thing at Hartford Brainerd Airport in Hartford, Connecticut. And we took over a group of 30 T hangars, and I was one of the 5 that was involved in doing that. And the state was happy to have us do that because they felt they didn't want to put up with 30 of us asking, can you fix this, can you fix that, can you take care of this? So we took it over and we did it very well. And we pay dues of $165 to $175 a month. Now, that's a pretty good size airport. We have 250 to 300 tenant airplanes on that airport. And we've gone 2 years without paying any dues because our maintenance has been negligible for 2 years. But we're normally about $165 to $175 a month.
So, excuse me, sir, just so we understand, that's not rent? All you pay is dues to the,
Well, yes, that's right. We maintain ourselves.
and you pay your own
And then we,
electricity and heat and so forth?
from those dues, we pay our lease to the airport. So for the 30 of us, the $165 to $175 a month covers what we owe the State of Connecticut Aeronautical Commission in Hartford. And we do all our own maintenance and take care of everything except for snow plowing. So it was so successful, they put up another 30 T hangars. And that group is doing their thing as well. I don't deal with them, but I know what they're doing. What they had done, I should say.
So it's a separate group.
That's a separate group. Other than us, and we have a 30-year lease with the state of Connecticut, and it has worked out very, very well. We've done this now since 1990. So this is 18 years that we've been doing this. And we get along just fine with the $165 to $175 a month for downtown Hartford's airport. Now, I'm under the impression from what I'm hearing that this is a rather fait accompli, that our organization is not going to be considered to take over the tea hangars because we have an invested interest in them since we've been living in them for so long. Well, if that be the case, I guess what it comes down to is, what is it going to cost to maintain ourselves in those tea hangars? And that certainly would be the break point. Now, we have felt all along as a group that Aerodrome Nantucket, run by Janet Boyle, has been excessive. But so be it. That's the way it was. We're hoping that we won't have excessive fees from this point on. Now, I happen to come to aviation in a strange way. After medical school, I joined the Air Force. I had no idea they trained me to be a pilot. So, but they got smart after that and said, you know something? We got more pilots than we know what to do with. So I became a flight surgeon, and it probably kept me out of trouble. But I never gave up the flying. And it was an honor to be part of the Air Force. And I've been flying here, and that's how I found Nantucket. I happened to fly over it one day, and I thought, how on earth does this little island have such a marvelous big runway? So one day I landed just out of curiosity, and I found out. So I've been flying here since 1965 and have a house here. Well, I'll be leaving the island the 1st of September, and I'm just curious, what do I leave in my hangar? Because I may no longer own it. Or should I say no longer have access to it? Now, I have not seen this proposal that Tom handed out, or Mr. Drake handed out. So I have no idea what's in it because I haven't seen it yet. I don't even know how to get access to it because I'm not a computer person. I just know how to fly.
You may have mine, sir.
Pardon me?
You may have mine.
Online? Oh, thank you. So my question is, around the state of Connecticut, which is an affluent state, the fees seem to run from $1,000 a year to $2,000 a year, which is approximately what $175 a month comes to. We have tea hangars at many of the airports in Connecticut. I realize this is Nantucket Island, but I think it has to stay within reason to keep the interest up. I have to admit openly, my interest would be rather limited if the fees were $600 a month. So,
May I interrupt you and ask you a question, sir?
absolutely.
Do you pay landing fees at the Hartford Airport?
No, we don't.
You don't? You're exempt from landing fees and ramp fees as well?
Yes,
Thank you.
yes, because we also get a 10% break on fuel there, being tenants at the airport. So they treat us unusually well there. And I was at Bradley Field, which is the international field for Hartford Springfield. Mm-hmm. Same kind of thing there. But when I was offered a tea hangar rather than a community hangar that I had at Bradley with a bunch of airplanes, I sort of thought, you know, there's going to be less hangar rash. I won't have to worry about people getting together to pull airplanes out and then move my airplane out and then move other airplanes back in. It just seemed much more simple. So that's how I moved to the Hartford Brainerd Airport. You have a question, sir?
No, I think you can probably wrap it up now. If
Well-
you don't mind, if anybody else wants to speak. give them a
Well,
chance.
thank you very much. I'd sort of like to know, can I leave the island safely September 1st and expect something good when I come back in June? And that's what it's all about for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Is there anybody else? Yes, sir.
There you go, sir.
Thank you, John Schwanbeck. Now back full-time resident of Nantucket after a few years in Florida, but back, and a tenant to the tea hangars. And I just, I just question the basic principle of taking over the hangars. My situation is a little bit different because I pretty much have retired from flying, at least for the time being. But you know, as a retired businessman, I try to put myself in maybe in the position of the airport and the commission, and I say to myself, well, you know, I can trade off an assured wholesale rate annual fee from a nonprofit association, and not worry about renting each individual hangar, not worry about empty hangars, not taking the risk of empty hangars, not worrying about the maintenance and all the other things. A wholesale fee versus taking on the responsibility and the risk of renting those hangars and potentially having empty hangars. So I just wonder, from the perspective of the airport, whether this really makes I question whether it makes sense when you have a nonprofit organization that could be paying you an assured annual fee, which, by the way, should be a lot higher now than it has been. I mean, you've gone very easy on the current manager. I don't think what she has paid per year has changed, at least to my knowledge, in recent memory.
We don't write leases like that anymore.
No. and I think as a nonprofit, this organization could probably pay a significantly greater annual wholesale fee and still make it work for the tenants. And the airport would not be taking on the risk of having empty hangars. I mean, who knows what the demand's going to be. So, anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schweinbeck. Anybody else want to speak on this topic? Are there any comments or questions from the commissioners?
I do. Well, when we decided to take it over, I thought it was also to be GA friendly, and I'm hoping we'll continue with that cost-wise. Basing it on what it's costing the airport as opposed to maybe what a market rate is in some other location. But because I don't think it's...
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt you, but the only other discussion we had internally was, okay, in terms of cost structure, the T hangar should be a little bit more than the common because of, one gentleman said, you know, not so much hangar rash, it's a dedicated one, you're not putting it back, that type of thing. So that's the guide we were using. I think somebody did bring up something, and I've heard it from other folks, and that is a fuel break for tenants, which encourages it. I had an individual from another airport who has a hangar, and he said, look, I'd rather fly more, so if you give me the fuel discount, you're getting it back, I'm getting a better deal. And so I think we need to look at a couple of those things. But again, our existing structure, which is fairly in line with the survey that we did, would be that the T hangars would be just slightly more than what a common hangar would be.
So we're not basing
or
on what it
more
costs the airport, because we're taking on additional...
And we have no idea what that is. We did a structural engineering study. They say they're in very good condition, but, you know, we don't know what the overall maintenance costs are going to be. We had considered the possibility of setting up a separate cost center for that going forward.
Well, these are things we can talk about further.
But I just use a little caution with this. We can set those things up, we can do it, but what goes into that soup is questionable. Gentleman mentioned, you know, why is this big long runway sitting on this island? That big long runway costs a couple dollars. When I'm looking at a $19 million taxiway rehabilitation, I understand we want to be as friendly as possible and everything else, but every dime helps a little too. So, and trust me, we do allocate it accordingly with the larger corporate jets. And I totally agree with what everybody's saying. We want to be as user-friendly as possible for GA. But I don't want it to be, you know, okay, it's only for the cost of that T hangar. We have to look at the whole picture a little bit too. And
a lot of empty spots out there. Like if you go out there.
In the T hangars?
On the tie downs and the hangars.
No, I don't disagree.
It's a sad state.
As far
far as the T
But I don't think our cost with the tie downs right now are driving anybody out.
Well, you know, I think tie downs are more transient, right?
Well, we have some that are,
If you own a plane on Nantucket, you don't want it to be on a tie down in the winter. So you're,
if you're here in the winter, that's correct, yeah. My understanding is there's also a lot of hangar space that's not utilized either in the winter.
No, that's because of
The fee.
cost. We have our T
Okay.
hangars, half of them are empty because Janet was charging so much that people couldn't sublet them. So half of them are empty.
So maybe we should be looking at the overall rate structure for all hangars and things.
As far as, I'm a little bit confused that the T hangars would be more than the common hangar. Correct me if I'm wrong, but when someone is a tenant in the common hangar, you have to send staff over there to pull the plane out.
When they're available.
With 2 hours.
So with a 2-hour notice, you have to give us 2 hours notice.
Right, but that cost you, your staff
Mhm.
cost you that time, where the T hangars.
Cost me time to go send a fuel truck over to the T hangar too. That's all wrapped into, you know, it's not additional staff.
I don't follow that.
I don't either.
The same crews are doing the same tasks. But if you own a T hangar and you want to go in and get your airplane and go, you do it. If you own a common hangar, you got to call us up 2 hours in advance, and we try to get over there as often as we can on time to get it out. But we may also be pulling airplanes out and leaving them outside for quite a while that paid for hangar space, so that we can get to the guy in the back. And again, there's always a chance of hangar rash when you're doing more of that.
Same on the reverse process going back into the hangars.
But that sounds like it's a lot, it costs the airport more to send the crew to jockey around airplanes.
Well, I'd be glad to take input from anybody who can show me other airports where that structure is, where T hangars are less than common. I have reached out and we've tried to look, and T hangars are always the next highest priority.
Mr. Gasparo? Excuse me, Mr. Gasparo?
Is there a vacancy in the common hangars, or is there a wait list?
Weightless.
Thanks.
So that, you know, we have to take that in consideration when we're looking at, okay, well, is it too expensive? Well, then why do we have a wait list?
Okay.
I had one other
Yes.
on the draft leases. It was highlighted for discussion regarding the insurance. And is that something
I
that?
think that was highlighted to have our insurance folks review it.
Okay, and so is that a common? I assume it is, but I just because I saw it highlighted to have to carry that kind of insurance and have the airport named, is that also then going to be a significant additional expense?
Again, I don't know. I have to ask what they're paying now and what, you know, our attorneys put it in. Then we run it by our insurance company, and they make sure that they're adequate for what, you know, our protections are.
That's fine. Then I'll wait to hear from council. I just when it was highlighted, I didn't know if it was for us.
Yes, Mr. Planzer?
Thank you. It's nice to see you all again. I'm a part owner.
Would you, just for the record, identify yourself, please?
Sure. It's Neil Planzer, and I share a hangar and an airplane with Gail Avery. And I just want to raise a couple of points because I thought this is an interesting discussion. And while you're gathering facts, the more information you have, the better. As I know, Tom, what you're trying to do, and I'm sure it'll have a good outcome. I know you're pro-GA. I know the commission is pro-GA. I just want to make a couple of points. Right now, the hangar costs about $340 a month. In the last 5 years, we spent about $2,000 on our hangar doing repairs. And that has to do with going through the management company that does it. We also have done repairs, Gail and I, on things that we handle ourselves. And I think every tenant here does that. So it keeps the costs down. It is really important to understand in a lot of ways it is beneficial for me, and I'm not part of that group, so I'm just talking for Gail and I, that we think it's beneficial for the airport to do it. There are empty hangars, and I don't think that's quite has to do with demand. I think it has to do with people waiting to see what was going to happen to the lease and whether they would be able to have equity in their hangars like they did in the past. I don't think, with due respect, that we have a demand exceeding space on this airport for airplanes. What we want to do is create a reasoned and reasonable fee in and around what we have now, and we work out some way for the airport to have protection against outrageous costs on maintenance, and you can do that. Even if you set it for 1 year, you can have a different basis the next year as you see things develop that will need repair. The real key to it is to generate more volume of planes at the lower end of the spectrum to fill those hangars. I understand airports very well. I think we all have some touch of it. I know the commission does, but I've been around airports my entire life. The real key, Tom, is you cannot take a Cessna like Gail and I own, 172, and say that you have to pay a exceeded portion for the size of the airport. Nobody does that. Now, we understand.
Sorry, I don't understand what you mean by exceeded portion.
Well, when you're factoring it in, we should pay what is reasonable for the use we have of this airport, not what the G5 use of it is. The cost of the runway has to do with the weight of the aircraft.
So for 1230, that runway is what, that type of runway.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I understand.
And we get thrown to that runway. No, I don't, thrown's probably not a bad word, but we'll volunteer, get put on that runway all the time. Right. And that, and
I know what you're saying now.
You know, for my colleagues here, even though we're not in the same group, that runway, you know, we operated our airplane in DC out of a 1,800-foot runway for years and years and years. So there's a lot of runway out here. The airport's well-maintained. We, as a community, you as a commission should be proud of that airport. I think everybody is saying is giving us the opportunity in the current structure. If you could lower it, God bless you, but keep it in that current boundary. I think that's all Gail and I are looking for is right of first refusal. We want to keep that hangar. We've had that airplane in there. I've owned that airplane with Gail for 6 years, but he's been in there, I think, since the Wright brothers taught him to fly. So I would like to keep us in that room. And if you're going to put ancillary costs in there, at least do it as you plan on a public hearing so we can counter that. I am confident that this commission, and you in particular, will give us what is a reasoned and reasonable approach to those hangars. That's all I'm looking for, and I can't imagine anybody's looking for anything else than that.
Thank you, Mr. Planzer. You have another comment?
I just want to say that as I've listened to all of this and contemplate our previous discussions, my understanding and thinking on the basis of the airport taking over the T hangars was to prevent a situation similar to what you currently had, where a single entity could then essentially profit on the last people coming in, if you would, or who wasn't initially part of the initial group. My thinking isn't to, you know, make this a real profit center, but to promote the stability. And you know, again, I thought that if the airport owns it and controls it, then it would be preferable for GA than to have an entity where we did then maybe everything's great right now, but during the term of the lease, some changes happen, and now we don't have control, and you end up back in that situation where the costs are then increasing either on the last people in or, you know, everybody. So
Just one
that was
note, if I
my
may,
thinking
too.
on it.
Our current rate structure and what, you know, in our thought process for the proposal is, it's just a monthly fee. There's no maintenance assessment or additional maintenance costs. It's all covered under the one monthly fee, just as our current hangar tenants. So.
Okay, thank you. I want to say a couple of things. First of all, I am personally very sympathetic to the whole GA issue. As a kid, I remember going to the airport, and I've seen pictures of it in the 50s and 60s when there were, I don't know, 30, 40 little planes sitting out there. And now even the visiting planes, there aren't all that many small ones that come in. There's some, but they're not certainly clustered the way they were then. At least that's my observation. So we're not trying to put the screws to anybody in the GA community here. We believe honestly that the solution for management that we've come up with, and I'd like to reiterate what Mr. Gasparo just said, about, things are fine now, but the own management of the group can change. The people who are in and out of it will change. And that presents some risks to us and to you that we probably none of us want. Yes, if the airport takes it over, there's some costs and there are risks to that too. So we would like to be fairly compensated, but I think we have to, when we come up with a proposed price here, take into consideration the points that have been made today, and I think they're very good ones. The second thing I'd like to say is I'm delighted you all came and talked to us, because this almost never happens. And we meet monthly, and very few people show up, if any, to some, I guess, watch on TV. I don't really know. But thank you for that, and hope you will keep coming back, even when we get this resolved. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We do have an agenda here. I guess we're up to the manager's report.
Yes. So on the project side of the house, the maintenance department has been working to paint runway 624, and I just want to make the commission aware of an incident that occurred last, I think it was Tuesday evening. Our crews were out on the runway painting. It was, I believe, after midnight, or whatever it was, after the tower was closed. We had issued a NOTAM 2 days prior. They pulled the circuits out for the lighting system, and they put up the large yellow lighted X's that are required. And on common frequency, which is used after the tower's closed, an aircraft had announced that he was on final approach for runway 24. Luckily, one of our maintenance guys heard that, got on the radio, and called that there's people on the runway, it's closed, and they went around and came in on runway 33. So our maintenance folks avoided a disaster, essentially. And the group that is responsible for it actually took responsibility, and before we could report it to FAA, they reported it too. So the FAA is looking into it. But I just wanted to make you aware that that's the type of things that our folks have to be aware of all the time. I mentioned the regeneration pad earlier. Again, great work on the maintenance department. The vault replacement, the new system's up and operational with a temporary backup generator. The new generator's due in the fall. The FIDS PA system is working well. We still have some outstanding funding issues there. The geometry issue, there's a final draft that we're reviewing, but I have expressed some concerns. The FAA's recommended alternative is a partial parallel to runway 624, both north and south of taxiway Charlie, which would be a very costly project. It would be into environmentally sensitive areas and take a lot of time to accomplish. I have no problem if that's part of the long-range, long-term planning, but if that's going to be a standards requirement and we have to complete that before we do other projects such as Taxiway Echo, I have a lot of problems. Taxiway Echo is crumbling, literally. We're paying $10, $20, $80,000 a repair here and there. That is an issue. The parking, not having enough parking, is a significant safety issue. Just imagine a situation I just ran through with what happened the other night. If that was runway 1533 and we were parking airplanes there on the evening, and nobody was there, but the X's were up, the NOTAM was out, and the lights are out. That aircraft could have landed while Globals and G5s are parked on that runway. To me, that's a much higher safety concern than what is perceived to be an issue at Charlie and 1230. So I want to make sure we proceed with caution with that. Crosswinds to Go is up and operational. They're trying to be open 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. They're facing some staffing challenges, as we all are at this time of year when the number of the summer help goes back, but they're working on that. The App Ride TNC, and I'm going to have to change that because just today I got a white paper that there was a study done and they're going to standardize the terminology and the icons and everything else for that. And I forget off the top of my head what it's going to be, but we have designated an area for the app-based TNC providers. Again, NOAA did the analysis, and the terminal curb frontage, we only have about 1/3 of the capacity that we need to handle all the types of operations that are taking place there. So from a security and safety issue, we designated an area. It's in the parking lot. We have the wayfinding signs up. We have the directional signs up. And we're working with the police again to enforcement and try to just, educate people where that is. So it's up and operational. The signs are not Nantucket style. We're going to look at that when we review the common standard has now been developed and everything. So we'll hopefully have that in place for next year. But we did designate an area for that. And just so you know, I believe it was Uber contacted Julian Sears' office, and Noah's had a conversation with his representative about, the whole situation. We attempted to reach out to Uber in advance, but I have no way of contacting Uber with a phone number or anything else. I think we may have received one from Julian Sears' office. So, Hangar 5 construction is, if not complete, almost complete. Very well done. Great contractor. They may be coming back to put an application in for some additional improvements, electrical and otherwise. And the Blade facility, the construction there is moving along very well. The chairman and I took a brief tour inside today. They're doing a really nice job of that, and I will give Blade credit. They are also on the ball with regard to, for example, the Altius agreement. They kept that moving so that it was here on time and everything else. They want to make sure they're doing everything right. So far, so good. On the RFP update, we discussed the airport gas earlier. Sun Island Road, the RFP is out for available parcels and proposals due back August 22nd. We're working on the fuel supply RFP with the fuel farm rehabilitation in that. We had bids due last Thursday for the ARF door repairs, and we received no bids, so we have to put that back out. We're also working on the UPS lease, which is getting ready to expire, and working with Marine Home on their option for their hangar. On the operations side of the house, you may recall we received a new tug. It has experienced some engine problems. Nathaniel has diagnosed it. The manufacturer sent a representative over to confirm his diagnosis, and now they're looking at whether they're going to ship it back and replace the engine or what they're going to do with it. We had an unsafe operation, another one. It's in your packet. It was a helicopter, and I will say that a number of folks observed it, including I observed parts of it. We have some video of it. We have audio recordings of it. A number of what I would consider violations and just total disregard for any safety concerns and or security. The aircraft essentially called in once, and I don't know if it was on tower or Unicom, but I did hear one on the radio, and then nothing. Came around, landed, came right across the top of a JetBlue, landed in the SIDA, shut down, discharge your passengers.
By the Cape Air ramp.
Right in the Cape Airs, yep, and Retrix. Discharge of passengers, fired it up and took off. And not talking to anybody. We have audio tape or audio recordings of him indicating that he was transmitting on the wrong frequency. And so we turned that one over for investigation, contacted the registered owner of the aircraft, and I believe he may be coming next month to dispute this. But again, Noah responded with all the actual recordings, and it's quite clear. I support Noah 100% in this in terms of banning that operator from the airport. It was, well, at this point, if they come in and say, look, you know, everybody makes mistakes, I get that. If that's the, you know, approach, fine, I'm good with that. But if somebody doesn't want to acknowledge it and, you know, take responsibility, that to me is a recipe for disaster under safety management systems. And we need to make sure that behavior gets corrected. So if the individual wants to come in next month, that's fine, we'll be glad to listen to them, but based on the records that we have right now, they're not permitted.
He also claimed he paid his landing fee in cash to somebody.
And he did, we have.
Is it legal, though, to tell him he can't land in Nantucket again?
For the safety of the airport, we can, yeah.
And it's legal?
Enforcing it is a little difficult, but it is legal, yes.
Okay.
Because he's a
Again,
commercial operation.
We're not sure if he was commercial or not. We don't know what he was. Again, he just.
What was FAA's take on this?
We haven't heard back from them on it yet.
Okay.
On the freight side of the house, Allies Freight is doing trial runs this week, and they expect to be up and operational fully within 30 days. They did put a sign up on their hangar. They have a manager there. They're staffing it, so that's good. I just want to make a note, and you know, we talked about the maintenance department. They do a tremendous job, but our operations folks are an impressive unit. The seasonals and the full-time, they handle thousands of movements, various types of aircraft. I recall some incidents years ago that I was involved in where, you know, somebody was upset because they had one type of airplane. Well, they handle all types of airplanes, and they fuel them, and they park them, and they tow them. And they do a very good job, and they're very professional. I just want to give them a shout out because I think this time of year they get, especially this past weekend, they really worked quite a bit. Just one other comment. I attended a portion of the Northeast Chapter EEE conference in Jersey City, and a topic that is coming up, as you can imagine, is the event that took place out in Seattle, Tacoma, where an airline employee stole an airplane and took it up in Joy Road and crashed it. Where the organizations are just concerned that there's not a knee-jerk reaction from Congress as to how that's addressed, but we think there may be with a stronger focus on employee screening. My personal opinion is I don't know that screening of that individual would have precluded that event. I think there's other safety-related issues that they can address. Any questions before I go on to statistics?
Go ahead, thank you.
Okay. Operations are down 20.16 for the month, 18.3 for year-to-date. The general aviation ops are up 2.8 over the last year. And let me just be clear of something, because I think it was something that was mentioned earlier. You know, these gentlemen are referring to general aviation, and sometimes that all gets lumped in. What we were saying here in this number is the GA corporate ramp. So I define it, general aviation and corporate, as two different types. This really should say corporate. The enplanements were up 14.05% over last June, down year-to-date 0.3, almost 0.4%. So I think we're starting to see a leveling off of that, and we may actually see an overall increase based on the increases that we're experiencing on the seasonal carriers. Cape Air saw a 19% increase in enplanements. Delta experienced a 27% decrease. That was predominantly associated with the number of flights and a late start date. JetBlue has a 15% increase, while Nantucket Air had a 45% decrease. TradeWinds was down 7%, and Retrix was up 81% for the month of June. And American saw an 89% increase, again associated with the number of flights and the start time. In the Boston market, Cape Air experienced a 4% increase, while JetBlue saw a 9% increase. In the DCA market, JetBlue saw a 7% decrease, but American saw a 94% increase, again timing. New Bedford traffic continues to climb, up 55% or 231 passengers over last year. United to Newark carried 63 passengers on 6 flights with no operations in June of last year. Cape Air's White Plains traffic was up 319% or 99 passengers. The overall Hyannis market for June was up 29% or 563 passengers, with Cape Air up 291 passengers, Nantucket Air decreasing 451, and Retrix increasing 723. So I try to look at that as the entire market so you get a sense of what's happening with Hyannis. JetBlue in the Kennedy market had a 22% increase or 941 passengers. American and LaGuardia was down 26% or 32 passengers. Vineyard traffic was down 66%. And on the fuel side of the house, the Jet A gallons sold for June were down 0.8, up year to date 6.65, and year to date, so that would be a full fiscal year, up 6.6. For July, they were down 6.5. I have a feeling we may make that up in August based on what we're seeing. The Avgas was up 12.1% in June, and year to date down 8 almost 9%. July up 12%. The freight for June was down. We're hoping that this starts to turn around with the restart of the Allies Air.
I still don't get this UPS thing.
Why?
Why, I mean, FedEx is so big on air, bringing in freight by air, and UPS is virtually nothing in comparison. It's 10% of what FedEx does.
Well, as somebody once told me, FedEx is a airline that bought trucks, and UPS is a trucking company that bought airplanes.
Or rents them.
On the noise side of the house, there were 17 for June versus 18 last year, but you see, can you go back a minute, Dave? July, we don't have the current July up there. July numbers were up significantly, but again, a lot of repetitive. I think one individual had 32 complaints or something. So you'll see that in next month's report. And the only other item I have is on the personnel side of the house. In your packet is a draft telecommuting policy for your consideration and approval, if you so desire.
And when does that start and how long will it be, or do we know?
Well, the
Or is
policy
it a policy to be
once
forever?
The commission, at the top it says effective date or whatever, and that'll, it's whenever whether it's this meeting, another meeting, that'll be the effective date for the policy. And then what we'll do is have individual agreements, if it's approved, with an individual employee that'll identify the time frame. We're looking at a maximum of 1 year for a term right now. The one that we're talking about currently probably would not begin until October, maybe November.
Did we get one with the red line changes we talked about or not because of the?
Oh, no, didn't get Janine before she left. Do you have a red line version? You made.
Sorry, when the handout that you received has the changes, it's not changed in
It
the
has.
red line version, it just has the changes.
Okay.
It doesn't, it's not under track changes, it's not there.
I don't know what I did with that copy. Anyway, if it's what's in your packet, there were 2 changes that were made.
There should be a handout, too.
I'm looking at it. I have my handout.
You have your handout?
Oh, there it is.
Page 3, number 7 was changed.
Page 3.
I believe that's what it was, right?
Number 7, the first sentence is changed.
Was deleted, right?
It was deleted combined with the second.
And then the typo was fixed over on paragraph
Number 10, the typo.
I've been through this fairly thoroughly with Mr. Rafter, and I'm satisfied that it
With
is
this,
a good place to start. We
yeah,
may
I
wanna
think
change
I
it. I mean, the
explained
town's
last time,
policy
we took the town's policy as a template and then just,
tweaked it quite a bit.
yes. Well,
I tweaked it quite a bit. But basically, there are accountability standards for the telecommuting employee. There are, it's very specific about what costs we will pay and what costs we will not. The basic costs that we will pay are hardware and software, computer hardware and software. But other than that, we won't pay for rent or anything of that sort. And my own opinion is that this is a good place to start. We may want to tweak it again in the future, but
and again, we will have an agreement with whatever individual that we may approve that will identify, there's definitive goals. They'll be using our electronic time card system with a supplemental worksheet identifying the specific projects that they're working on.
How often and how long do you think this will be happening? I mean, is this something that's going to be common, and is this going to be an
With the
extra
existing
expense to
one,
the airport?
I think it's gonna be maybe a year and a half, but in all honesty, Commissioner, I've had a lengthy discussion with NOAA and looking at other openings that we've had and the lack of applications or, qualified applicants, it may be something that we may see a little more of, on a part-time basis or so, you know what I mean? It might be that if we can, the more we can do to make the job attractive, the more qualified candidates we'll be able to attract. So this may be something that we consider in the future for some other type of, positions. It's this generation, it's where we are with technology that, it could be a thing where you're, once a week you're doing this.
obviously there are a lot of staff positions that couldn't telecommute.
Right,
Right.
that I understand,
Right.
yeah.
By
I just
necessity.
wondering about I think one-on-one, I have meetings, and when we are on a teleconference, it's not the same as talking or seeing the person. So that's
Right.
some of my concerns.
Well, there are also
There's-
ways of doing it with video.
Yes.
Right,
video
but that's going to
conferencing.
cost more money for the little board I'm on.
No, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's an option.
Okay. But that's more expense.
Yeah, that's right.
We can do FaceTime with our phones too.
True.
And the policy also has the option of whether it's a full-time employee, a full-time hourly employee, or a part-time hourly employee.
Right.
So it can be adapted to the particular circumstance. Are there any questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve the proposed telecommuting policy in the airport?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there further discussion?
I don't love it, but I understand it.
Yeah, I'm with you, Arthur. I don't love it, but I guess I understand it.
I think it should be used on a limited basis.
And I was going to say, please, limited.
Well, the way it's set up in here, I think I have to approve every situation,
Yeah.
and I'll obviously keep you informed, and we'll keep you informed, so we've only got one potential one right now, and then there are no other ones in the wings at this point. So, we'll see.
I guess I had one question for discussion. What about a situation that somebody requests that they want to telecommute? I'm concerned sort of with precedent, if you may. And you don't necessarily think you want that to happen. Are you on
My understanding
solid
from
ground?
discussion with the attorneys is it's totally at our discretion.
Yeah, that's what I'd want to be sure, is that someone else doesn't say, look at that.
Yeah,
that
that's a
looks-
good
that
deal.
looks
Yeah.
good.
I can
And-
stay.
And
Right,
in
I want to
fact,
do that
Have
too.
a right to.
And
You'll notice it's not even part of a grievance process or anything else too. It can't be, so.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Did you?
I eyed.
Aye, thank you. It's unanimous. Moving along to my agenda again. I guess we're up to commissioners' comments.
I have some comments this week.
Well, go ahead, Mrs. Topham.
Go right ahead. I'm just if I can read my own writing. Okay, I'm still concerned about the Uber parking. I don't think we're doing our local taxi cab drivers justice. I don't think they should be able to pick up at all at the airport, personally. I understand that now there are a couple of Ubers that are fixing their cars or working on their cars in our parking lot. And I just really would hope that we could set some kind of a better standard. I know the parking and all that. I thought we were going to have the parking or the driving drop off and go into the FAA parking and no pickups. Why can't they go down the street? Why do we have to have them being parked there to pick up? That's one of my questions. And what's the other one? Are the police really enforcing this as well as the handicapped? I know that you mentioned it earlier, but are they out there doing it, doing their
To the best of my
job?
knowledge, yes, and I've
Yeah.
had discussion on handicap, and I told them it's zero tolerance.
Yeah,
You start
okay.
writing.
Okay. Now, you also mentioned that we're going to have something redone, a taxiway. Didn't that just get done for $80,000 and is now going to be redone?
That was a patch.
Patch.
It was
But-
an $80,000 patch. And
But it's still not good, I
Well,
understand.
there's some issues with it, and they're coming out to check that, but we also had to do another $10,000 patch where there was a hole found.
Yeah, but is that because it wasn't patched properly with the right
We don't know
ingredients,
if it
we'll say?
if it was a sub-base issue or a design issue.
Okay. And then, when we're looking, can we look for other, I guess I'm going to say paving companies? Years ago, we had Lawrence Lynch, other ones. How far out do we reach out besides?
Well, Lawrence Lynch put in on the last bid, and I thought there were 2 or 3 actually.
Okay.
It's the price point that drives that.
Well,
And
I
in
know,
all
but you
honesty-
mentioned 9 million or some kind of
Well,
millions.
and that was, we have a lot of heartache with $19 million for a parallel taxiway.
Yeah.
But, we try to put a smile on it somehow. That was one of the things we said, well, at least it should attract some additional bids from other
Well, that would be
contractors.
good. Okay, what else do I have?
If I may, answer your first question about the Uber, the reason we put them in the location where it is to get away from the congestion. There's congestion in that area where the buses are, where everybody else
Yeah.
is. And we are not allowed to say they can't operate, unfortunately. We have no
Well, I
control
think the
over it.
town needs to take the bull by the horns and do something about it. If you have over 100 Uber cabs, we need to be doing something
There are not
about it.
100 Uber cabs. I'm told that there are about 40.
Okay,
Well,
well,
it-
I've heard from the taxi, and they say they've counted over 100.
My understanding is it can fluctuate. Again,
Mhm.
peak
That's-
weekend, they bring people in from off island, either rent cars, have cars, whatever. It's
And they have
open.
no insurance, they don't have to worry about anything. I mean, this is more a community issue maybe than, as much as an
State
airport
law
issue.
Did it, and I don't disagree with everything you're saying. Uber is very smart when it comes to getting legislation passed. In fact, I think I told you, we made an effort to have the legislation modified in this last go-around, and the governor's office was very concerned because it was controversial before, and therefore wouldn't put it on an adjoining bill or anything to modify it to give us the control.
Okay.
I will also say, Mrs. Topham, in my experience coming in twice this summer on a late ferry and not having personal transportation, every cab refused to go to Nantucket.
Well, then that's their, that's their, that's
The only way
it.
we got home was through Uber.
Yeah,
So
so,
there are issues on both sides.
yes. About the security position for Mr. Tallman, has that been filled, or what's happening on that, please?
What we're doing is we have reassigned functions, and we're kind of changing the duties a bit. It's not complete, so I don't want to speak out of turn just yet, but we're realigning things based on some analysis that we've done. And again, the lack of being able to get a qualified candidate. We have some fixes in-house that we're we're looking to do.
Okay. And last comment is that we had a presentation by Cape Air. They were going to do wonders. I called Cape Air to get a reservation. I was told to leave my number and they would call me back. I'm still waiting for the call back. And that was a week ago. So I think that Cape Air is not doing what they had said they were going to do. That's my last comment. And I'm now in a good mood, just so you know.
Anybody else?
I do have a couple things. Tom hit on the new signs that were installed, and I did let him know that I sort of questioned them a bit, and I'm glad to see that they may be revisited. I don't know if any of the other commissioners share the concern. I don't personally find them to be in keeping with sort of the character of the airport that we've tried to promote, and I think even our predecessors in terms of quarter board type signs. And I understand that there's perhaps a conflict in goal of trying to very clearly convey a message that perhaps, you know, a big white board does better than a hand carved wood sign, but I also still feel that we have to be sensitive to the charm of our airport, and that we are different than, you know, this isn't Logan or whatever. So anyway, I appreciate if they could be revisited and not just a symbol change out, but in fact, a sign and you know,
Actual, yeah,
I just think
not a sheet metal piece.
yeah, we've done a really good job in terms of, I mean, the entry sign is this beautiful wood carved, you know, quarter board. I don't need to go on and on. I think I just wanted to convey at least that concerned me to see that. So that was one thing, and thank you for doing what you can. I understand that you're also doing what you can to move the Ubers. So, and then back to, just because it is the season, in terms of, I know ops is juggling an awfully lot, but the APU use and jet idling on the ramp is, in my observation, fairly excessive. I understand, you know, Sundays at 5 o'clock, you know, they can't do anything. But I drive by the ramp pretty much every day between 5 and 6, and there's usually one or two running for quite a while, and that should be a time that I would think is fairly easy to take notice.
One of the other things is weather. Weather plays a huge part in that. But you're right.
Whatever could be done, I just think it's an environmental, you know, I know there's a lot of focus on sort of noise to the flying, but what about, you know, that piece of impact to the neighbors and the fuel that goes along with that and carbon footprint. So whatever could be done to simply take notice or again, continue to inform, I think would help the overall mission. Thank you.
While we're talking about signage, I've talked with Mr. Rafter this morning about the signage along the road there as it comes in. The signs on the right-hand side, on the island between the taxi lane and the main roadway, are both inconsistent in their makeup and a little confusing in their wording. What I suggested was that the two designated taxi drop-off lanes both have signs that say taxi drop-off only. That the spaces behind that, before you get to the last one, which is designated for delivery trucks, those be designated for passenger drop-off, sort of drop and go. What did you say, kiss and
go?
Kiss and go. And that the other side, which now has big signs that are not in character, those signs say passenger pickup on that side, on the left side, for private cars. I think that would help eliminate some confusion. Clearly, there isn't enough room there, but that's what we got, and hopefully that will.
Additionally, and I know it's an extremely difficult thing to do, but we're trying to have police and everyone else educate the public and inform them that they can go into the parking lot totally free for 3 hours and not have to go to the kiosk or anything else. And that's why we put it on the new sign, to try to get people. I had a lady come up and say, "Where's the best place?" I said, "Just pull right into the lot. You can leave your car there for 3 hours, go have a cup of coffee." So it's only an extra 50 to 100 feet maybe.
Because that was one of my questions when you brought that up, Mr. Drake, was that, do they use the parking lot, or do they use, like they do at the steamship, do the lane, the High Line, I mean, and they use the lane and block everybody trying to
That's-
get going or
That's
something?
what happens. We get a lot
Yeah.
of blockage, especially
No.
on the weekends, and that's why we're trying to just organize and sort, who goes where.
This meeting room discussion that's down here on the agenda, Mr. Rafter received a memo from the administrator of the HDC saying that the training room upstairs is not going to be available for their Tuesday afternoon meetings from 1st of September, I think he said.
Mhm. That's,
Well, that's
Memo
what
was in
came
the-
back with you.
yes, it's in our packet.
And so would we give up our space and time for them?
Or day.
Day, space, and time, all at once. And so, Mr. Rafter, why don't you take it from there about your discussion with the assistant town manager?
Well, we're receiving mixed messages as to when that's going to occur and how how they're going to be accommodated. They are working on some potential alternatives with the school and long-term with possibly redesigning the old fire station to a meeting place. But again, the initial response from the assistant town manager was that, things were moving too fast. It's not going to happen for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got another one from the same office that said it's going to happen September 1st. So we don't quite know what exactly is going on with that.
But this room is not available at this time on other nights of the week. And except for maybe Friday.
I think Friday.
Which isn't going to fly. And the other thing about this room is the TV coverage, which we want to continue. So unless we want to go to a different time, radically different time or date, I mean, my feeling is we should stick with what we have and say, unfortunately, no. we can't.
Well, and the town administration is working on, they put out a survey, what facilities do you have, what are their capabilities, so they're trying to come up with
I
solutions.
mean, we used to have 2 meetings a month, and we let Shab sort of sidle in crab-wise into the second meeting, and now that's not available to us if we ever need it. And so I think we should be pretty firm and stick with what we've got. Anybody disagree?
No, I don't disagree.
The last thing is, I think, as you think you may have heard, Janine's father died this morning. And we don't know anything about a service or anything else at this point, or whether there'll be memorial gifts. But I would like to propose, if, and make it entirely voluntary, that we put together either a bouquet or a gift, a monetary gift, if that's what they request. And I was going to suggest that make a voluntary contribution. You can talk to me about it later, but if $25 is not unreasonable, I think Janine is a wonderful support for all of us as well as for the manager and the rest of the office. And I think I would like to see something done. And I will do something myself. And if you'd like to contribute to it and have your name added, that'd be great.
I think a monetary to either through the family. I think her dad had diabetes, so whether there'd be something on that, you could see if there was a charity that they would have. Right. Flowers are beautiful, but they die like the person. So, I mean, they're lovely to have.
I would prefer that too.
Yeah.
Let's just see.
I would think did you say $25?
Per each person.
Okay. I was going to say, yeah, we got to do more than that.
Yeah, right. No, $25 for each person. We'll probably top that up a little bit too.
Can we, as an airport commission, do it from the commission, or just, I know you're talking individually.
What I was saying was doing it, putting all our names on it, saying doing business, DBA, the airport commission, or something like that. This, so. Thank you. That's all we have, I think. Anybody else have anything? Is there public comment at this time? Mr. Flaherty?
All those taxis I refused you, did you report them to the police?
I did not, which I should have.
Yeah, it'd be like having an incident out at the airport and go unreported.
No, I understand, but you know, at 10 o'clock at night, you don't want to sit down and take, you don't want to sit there and take down license numbers either.
Then, what do we complain about it then?
Well,
I was just stating a fact, Mr. Barrett.
David Barrett, taxi operator. Part of the trouble with the Uber is they refuse, there's only a handful, of 5 or 6, that put the required U and identify who they are in the window. They come in, they come, they go, you don't know who they are, the police kid, the police officer, or what, they don't know who they are. They say, well, are they Uber, are they not Uber? You go up and ask them, no, they're not. And they say if you look on the app, you can look, and they are, they're lying. And they still are coming in, even today, and especially after the kid leaves at 3:30, we have no coverage. You need somebody right through to the end of the day. They need somebody else to come on and take over. Because the day before yesterday, somebody pulled in behind me. I happened to be the only one in the chute with a Mercedes SUV, dropped off somebody, got out and hugged, didn't want to back up, and they floored it, went right over the island, out and out of the thing. And that happens quite often. I don't say quite often. We've all seen
I'm
it.
sorry, were you saying that was an Uber or not? No, that was just.
No, that was just
that was
yeah.
different.
Personal.
No, you changed the subject there.
No, but we have nobody there to watch anything that's going on. And when the kid leaves, it's a crap show. They need to identify themselves, and they're not using the thing inside. They're dropping over. I got pictures today of a pickup truck one dropping off, and they block the access to ops and let people out there now. And there's a problem there with a lot of people are afraid to go in there because they go to pull in, they see that sign that says
Where are they afraid to pull in?
into operations to drop off their people a pickup.
You mean in front of the FBO?
Yes.
That's not operations, that's the FBO.
Well, we call it operations. Private plane area.
It's the FBO, yes.
Okay, FBO, thank you. It is what it is. It says authorized personnel only. And they look at that and they're afraid to go in there. Then they back up and they clog the thing. They let the people out next to the sign. I don't know whether there's a legality, whether that sign needs to be there or not. But it's right in their face and it says, what does it say, Diane? No, authorized personnel only, do not enter. If you could look at that.
Is that going into the FBO? Or
To the FBO.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So taking a right.
Yeah.
From your.
To go in there. And then they stop and they back up like 4 feet at an angle, then open up all their doors and do their business because they're afraid to go in there.
Kissing goodbye, as Mr.
Yeah.
Raptor said.
So, and I have one other suggestion. Since 9/11, we've had a lot of things have changed, and they took away the 3, 4, and 5 taxi spots in front of the terminal, and then after that came the investigation and the fingerprinting of us. They know exactly who we are. There's no question about who we are. Whereas the Ubers, you don't know who they are. But as far as our chute goes, I think it would be much more accommodating because the people tend to go up like that towards the end of the line. If we can fill that 2, 3, and 4 in again, I mean, excuse me, 3, 4, and 5, so that there's 7 cabs in the front, 1 on the hydrant, and then the backup line to give proper service. I don't see any reason since 9/11 that things have changed, and I don't think that should be a prerequisite that we should have to leave that big gap in the front line.
I believe that was dictated by the TSA, not by the airport.
Before the FBI check of the drivers.
Well, I don't know whether it's changed or not. We can certainly find out.
It's just a suggestion. And that's it for me now. Thank you.
May I ask, Mr. Barrett brought up a good question. We pay a lot of money for the police coverage. What are their hours? And we don't have it after 3 o'clock? Is that what happens?
No, that's the CSO, I believe, the additional summer help.
Yeah, we don't pay for those.
We have full-time LEO inside doing screening.
We have what? I'm sorry.
Law enforcement, we're required to have them have a presence at the screening position or within a 5-minute responsibility.
Oh, that's what we pay for. Okay. And so that goes From what to what for time? Not that that's going to help us with this
Yeah, he's
issue.
inside.
It's somewhat confusing. It's the first flight, and then they have a break of a half hour, and then they have to come back for the rest of the day. So it's whenever we're screening passengers.
Okay, thank you. Because I was thinking we pay an awful lot of money and we're not getting the job done that I
We-
think we should be getting done. But it's not, if it's, you
We
say
pay a
it's,
lot of money, and we just recently performed an analysis, and believe it or not, we're getting more than what we're paying for.
we're doing what?
In terms of hours and
Okay.
the,
Getting more than what we're paying
rate
for.
that is there.
We are getting more than what we pay for? Okay,
If
thank
we
you.
could charge for Uber, we could probably afford more enforcement of ground transportation. It's just my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
I would make a motion
Please.
to enter executive session per Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21.
Hang on a second, excuse me.
I just want to thank the
Oh.
commission for listening to the concerns of the tea hanger residents. Thank you all very much.
Thank you for your
Thank you, and again,
presentation.
thank you for coming.
My motion is to enter into executive session per Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, to review the executive session minutes as enumerated on the agenda for review and possible release, and per Clause 3 to discuss strategy with respect to pending litigation with respect to the airport improvement plan projects, which in open session may have a detrimental effect on the litigation of the position of the Airport Commission, not to return to open session.
I'll second that.
How do you vote, Ms. Toppy?
Aye?
Ms. Planzer?
Aye.
Mr. Gasparo?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.